B is for bloom. In this second bonus lesson for Colori Flori, I am going to show you how to use the letter B in a different way, different from yesterday's one. I've cut out all the B shapes. This is in the sheet that you can download, and I'm going to use these stencil shapes along with aquarelle pencils. So these are pencils that's water soluble, and the joy of using them is that you can draw. You have the joy of drawing like with a pencil, and then when you add water to it, it becomes water soluble, and you can also draw on water, so you make the surface of the paper wet. And this is just a sketchbook project. This is just a simple way. It's no special paper, but it's a really nice way to explore how to use this material. And I'm going to show you two projects today. So these are the colors I'm using, and this is the Colori combo prompt of this week. So it's the yellows, saffron yellow, olive green, and then a charcoal. So I'm bending the rules a little bit. I bring a few greens in. You don't have to use all of them, but I'm just showing you the pencils that I have. At the top, those are the numbers of the Inktense pencils, and at the bottom I'm showing you the Museum Aquarelle from Caran d'Ache, and the numbers to remember there. And the end is 025 and 249. It's got a code beforehand, but it's the same for all of them, so you don't need to remember the long serial number. There's a sort of a rusty color as well. I could add that, but it's not really important. In addition to the aquarelle pencils, I'm using Payne's Grey watercolor. It's a pretty go-to basic alternative to black, and it's just a nice deep contrasting color. So you see how the colors change when it becomes wet. It's like effectively it's like becoming watercolor, and I really like using these two aquarelle pencils because the pigment concentration is really high. As you can see, it's very strong how it becomes very vibrant and rich. Once it dries, it becomes a bit more muted again, as it is with watercolor, but it's a very strong pigmented drawing tool. Then the color I'm adding there is Ink Black, which is Inktense color that I use very often in my courses. You may have seen me use it before. So two lessons. The first one is taking a flower and repeating it, simple flower that's been repeated in a number of ways, slightly different. And then this one is where I take inspiration from a peony, and I'm using the stencil of the bee, all the bee shapes, to create the petals. So this is my muse, beautiful peony, layers of petals, and I'm the aquarelle to create that. But first, here's the lesson where I use yellow as a background, and it's going to be layered on top. I want to create a background that's a bit textured and varied, not a perfectly even yellow. So the idea is to move the pencil around, create some texture, and I will add more color to it as well. This will eventually become a bit more blended because I'm adding water to it. I'm also using masking tape on the edge to create a block form in the middle. You don't have to do that, but it really is nice to create an area so you can draw over it. You can see where I go past it, and it makes it a bit easier to create this block form that can then be used as past the edges of the artwork. So as you see there, I'm actually drawing on top of the masking tape in places, so it goes beyond it, so the line goes beyond it, and it creates a better, almost like a cropped image. That must make sense when I remove the masking tape, you'll see. And it's the masking tape I use is 1/4 paper. Now I'm adding water, not too much water. I just want it all to blend a bit more. There's a bit of variation in it, as you can see. and once it's dry I will work on top of it. So I've got a dry paper surface, and I'm going to use the bee form to create flowers. It's like just a very simple, almost like a two-petaled flower, side view of a flower, and I'm using different bees. I'm repeating the same shape, using it in the flip side of the paper. So the idea is to create a variety of flowers, simple flower shapes on the same page, and playing with how you can create more of the same without them all being the same. And it's a really nice way to explore the aquarelle pencil. It's a simple project, and you don't have to think too hard, you don't have to plan too much. So what you'll see here is I'm creating the shape of the flowers are quite similar. I'm going to give it a stem and some leaves that correspond to the drawings I've done in the previous lesson, and I'm just improvising that shape of the bee. As you see, those narrow bee shapes, using them for the leaf pattern. I'm using the aquarelle pencil. This is the museum aquarelle pencil, and that's the olive color. I'm using it for the drawing of the green, and I'm just creating this almost like a funnel shape to link up to the top. Some of them's got lines, some of them's got the area just filled in, and then I'm trying to fit in the leaves to the edge so it doesn't go on top of the other flower next to it. So it is a stylized kind of a design. I am a designer as well, so I'm thinking in terms of this as a design that might become a textile or something like that, and you can just see how they squeeze into next to each other to sort of fit in that shape, in the space. That one's leaf is really squeezed in there at the top. Very narrow little one. And then I've got another one, another base of a flower. It's going to go in there. And you can see they're all family. It's all the same flower. I'm not trying to create too much variation. I'm just playing with the same form, and I am utilizing the same idea, same concept, and just delivering it slightly different. So there's variation, but there's a lot of similarity. And that is how the idea developed. So we had started off with just that bee shape and the scallop happening from it as I tried it out yesterday in the first lesson. Now I'm expanding and using it a bit more freehand and using my original drawings as inspiration to expand upon. Here I'm adding water again, so it's a second layer on top of the yellow. And yellow is wonderful as a base layer because it will be very tolerant of the colors that sit on top of it. In this instance, it will just brighten the layer on top of it. So I did plan the colors with a bit of input with this as the idea of not being problematic for layering. So you can really get an idea of how the aquarelle works and how you can draw and add wet, make it wet, dissolve it, and then draw on top of it again. So you can mix the two up. You don't have to finish drawing and then add color. You can really play between the idea of painting with the material that becomes dissolved, and then paint on top of it. As you see there, it was a very diluted layer, and just paint on top of it and then draw into it, and that fixes the drawn line as well. And there's a little border, little yellow border around it. That enhances the shape. The one to the left doesn't have such a prominent edge to it, the first flower I did, and I actually really like it more with the more prominent yellow edge to each flower. And that again is the beauty of working in a sketchbook, because that's how you develop and how you learn and how you develop ideas. And I might make a note to it next to it and go, okay, I'd like to do this again, but what I've learned from this is the idea of the border around the flower on a dark background, to make, to pay attention to that. So it is about the process. It's not about the pressure of making it come out perfect and having it all resolved. It's a work in process. It's something where you learn as you go. So you see I'm making the area wet again. I'm drawing on top of it, and then I'm painting water on top of it again, and that dissolves that mark. So I can play around with that. Here I'm drawing again just on the wet surface. And there you can see it all being covered. It's still a bit damp, but I can take the masking tape off, and there you see the outcome. You can always work on it again. You can use other pens. You can use a dip pen on top of it, but this is my first example of a repetitive pattern, if you wish, of the same flower in different ways. For this project, this lesson, I'm using the same stencil, but the application is quite different. I want to create a peony, and I'm just diving into the idea of making petals. And because it's yellow and it's just yellows, they can happily sit on top of one another. It's not going to create a big difference if the yellow is slightly darker than before. It creates a bit of variation, but all in all, it will you will see the shapes of the bee shapes, these petals, the tops of the petals, the curves, the scallop shapes, and that will form this peony flower. Adding more, and I'm adding a bit of green, very little, so this is a bit of variation in it, but it will all in all read still quite yellow. So be careful of not adding a green that's too dark. At the base of the flower, you can make it maybe a bit darker, but I'm not doing any drawing. I am just using the stencil of these bee shapes, and some of them are quite narrow. I'm then filling it in, joining them up. So rather than planning to draw the peony, I'm using the process of the stencil first, and then adjusting and making the colors and the shapes a bit more cohesive, just adding more color, getting the shapes to join in. Here I'm using it in a different direction, so it looks like the flower, the petals are sitting outward, so it's no longer just the upward ones. They're facing me. So it creates an effect of the flower being a bit more open. Here I've added water on top. I've dissolved the yellow, so you can see how it's quite soft, and in the middle there's some darker areas, so it creates the center of the flower. And then I'm creating very simple leaf in grey, just the Spain's grey leaf, adding a bit more detail in the middle, but it's soft and loose. It's not overly structured, So it's quite different from the other drawings that I've done so far. Here I'm adding just a few little blobs, and I'm doing this in the sepia brown color. I can dissolve it, add a little bit more depth in places, but I don't want to do it too much. The painting is quite resolved. You can see what it is. You can see its petals, and it's layered, and it's fine just having had those loose shapes that sit on top of one another from the stencil shape. So here's the structured option. The first one, looking a very simple flower that's in repeat, a little block of them on a dark background. And here's the second option. I hope you enjoyed this experience of trying to use a stencil with just limited bee shapes to create some flowers. And if you like this bonus lesson, come and join us on Colori Flori. There are 14 teachers teaching 14 very different projects, lessons, and you can do the lessons in your own time. You've got lifetime access to them, and it's a great way to learn and explore new possibilities and ideas. Thank you for watching.